Okay, and give us some context of this on the women out here with the yellow.
Yeah, that is, I think that would be another section of Zuvo Carnival. Um, like I said, they had about 10, 11 sections that went through that particular part of the parade there in St. Lucia. This is like right after they crossed the stage, or that particular section crossed the stage. And so it's like, they cross the stage, everything is, pretty much that's pretty much their showcase. The spotlights on them when they go on the stage, and once they cross the stage, it's pretty much like anything goes. Like in some cases, they'll keep these pieces, the backpacks, as they call them, or in some cases they may, give them away, donate them. They have young children there from that particular country or whatever it is. They could donate it to them, or sometimes you just see them laying on the street or on the ground.
Okay. Let's get to this shot right here. 1 second. And give us some context of this, please.
Okay. That particular moment is right before that section pretty much crossed the stage. That is more of like I would say like the midline or the back line portion of that particular section. Like the front line has already crossed the stage. They've already, showcased their backpacks, costumes, and everything like that. And so the rest of that particular section is now going on the stage. And, whether it's, like I said, they're in St. Lucia or Trinidad, or it could be like Bahamas, Jamaica that would have it, Barbados, or anything, like right before they jump on the stage, it's like they're really excited about that particular part. And, here in this particular case, since it's St. Lucia and we had the whole thing with the lockdowns for a couple of years, they haven't, in this particular case, they haven't had a carnival in St. Lucia since 2019. So 2020, 2021, they didn't have carnival. So here they had carnival after, pretty much a 3-year hiatus. And for St. Lucia, that was like one of the more anticipated carnivals that, people around the world, were looking forward to. So for, this particular example, that kind of like shows like how excited they were to, actually not just be part of the band, but actually cross the stage there in St. Lucia.
Okay, so let me ask you a question, because I'm not sure if, and I'm gonna try to make sure I frame this right. So I'm from Florida, right?
Word.
And people have a perception, and I've heard people say this, that strip club culture came out of Florida, and in their mind, it kind of pervaded the whole country and whatever. So my question is, when people are looking at carnival and how the women are dressed, do they have this same perception that it's a lot of out of bounds sexuality and it's degeneracy and yada, 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 and therefore we shouldn't be involved in it? And do they also have a class perspective to where if I'm of a certain class, I don't get involved in these kind of activities?
Oh man, since you said, you from the O, like I said, I'm from Tampa, so we Florida boys. So we know how it was when you had over in the mid late 80s, Uncle Luke, Two Live Crew, and all that stuff. So that's where the whole thing with the strip club culture kind of like came from. But here with the carnival culture, I did like kind of say in the modern days, you kind of like seen more of these costumes kind of look closer to like where people could perceive like it's like almost like a strip club culture or whatever it is, because they're more revealing as far as like the latest costumes are more revealing, much more revealing than they were in like the 90s or whatever it is. So that's kind of like how that kind of like comes up. But the way that they're culturally raised, even though you would have like them in like costumes like this, there's no way they would kind of like act like that pretty much like in public for these type of settings, like carnival settings or whatever it is. But it kind of like goes into the whole thing of where and I think we're going to go into this a little bit later, how quote unquote outsiders approach this carnival culture thinking that it's kind of similar to like a strip club culture, when it's absolutely not like that.
Okay. I'm glad you was able to bring that context in. So How are carnivals different based on nationality or even ethnic group or same nationality? So then you got some Caribbean countries where you got one nationality but different ethnic groups. And then you also got some Caribbean countries where pretty much everybody's the same ethnic group and the same nationality. So how do you think their carnivals are different?
Okay, well, let's start with where pretty much many people feel like Carnival has originated, which was Trinidad.
Okay.
There, that there's like kind of like a separate type of culture. Like originally, like of course you got like African culture, you got Indian culture, pretty much in there in Trinidad. So they kind of like have their differences, and it kind of like goes into the music that they have. You have calypso, you have soca, which is more like African based, and you have what they call chutney soca, which is more Indian based. There over in Trinidad, and if you listen to a couple of tracks like for soca, like if you listen to artists like Machel Montano, Bunji Garlin, Faye Ann Lyons, Patrice Roberts, that's different than like a Robbie B or someone similar like to a Robbie B. If you look up Robbie B for his tracks that he has, and he's pretty much from Trinidad, but has that chutney type of culture. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So that's one thing as far as like how they have some differences there within Trinidad, but you also have, when it comes to music, differences within different countries. You have Trinidad that can have soca. You could have Dominica that can have a different type of music. You could have Grenada that'll have their type of music. Some will call it soca, but it's like a different pace, a different beat, or anything like that. You could do that with St. Lucia has something called dennery.
Okay.
A type of music called dennery, which is like it could be completely different than what's in Trinidad, than what's in Dominica, that what's in the Virgin Islands, that's what's in Barbados. Barbados can have their own type of music as well. So when you go to these different carnivals, you get used to the music that they have within that particular country, and it's like a different style. So like for me, going to St. Lucia is different than going to Grenada, is different than going to Trinidad. That's different than going to Jamaica, where of course they incorporate dance hall with soca sometimes, so you get a different type of vibe or a different type of feel in going to each country with what they have to a certain extent. Because sometimes when you go to some events or be a part of some parades, you might get into a little bit of an issue where they might not play music that's native to the country that they're in.
Okay.
And they just play stuff that, well, a lot of people know are like the most popular stuff that's overall in the Caribbean, but it's not like tied to the country itself. So you kind of like have to balance that out to where, okay, if I'm a Grenada, I don't necessarily want to hear, soca music from Trinidad or, music from, let's say, St. Vincent that much. I want to hear what Grenada has. We have artists in Grenada. Why don't you play them? So those are the type of things or the differences that you have going to different countries when it comes to Carnival.
Yeah, and that's really interesting because I'm not sure most people understand if they're not from the Caribbean or they're not raised around West Indian people, is that each area kind of got their own music.
Yeah.
And so, you growing up, you just think, it's just, the Caribbean music is just reggae. And then you start meeting people and you hear soca and you call it the steel drums. I call it the steel drums. And then you hear, I didn't know about Cooper until I started hanging around a bunch of Haitians.
Right.
So you hear all this different music and you realize like every island kind of got their own music scene. But, growing up, all you know about is Bob Marley and reggae. You think that's pretty much all Caribbean music. So what's interesting is in all those areas, they kind of got their own music that goes with their carnival. Mm-hmm. And the experience can be a little bit different. And people can favor certain musics over other music because, that may be what they was raised on as opposed to listen to another type of music.
Right, yeah. And, you bring in, Haiti, they have, of course, compa and zouk there in Haiti. And it's a different type of pace sometimes, especially with compa. Compa, is really slow and, at times. And sometimes it could be really, you could be really fast with compa with zouk. But you also have, like I said, with other countries, you have like the dennery segment in St. Lucia. You have bouillon in Dominica, and like raga soca, they would say in other countries, and sometimes it's a fusion. But like you said, sometimes people group it into one one genre, like reggae. Like, I mean, you got, what is it, iTunes that still won't or categorize soca as their own genre. They still put it in either reggae music or world music. So
yeah, I feel you. Okay, so what nation, based on your particular personal experience, what areas, or if multiple areas, have you had the best carnival experience?
This one, this question here. You know what? From where I've been to so far, two stand out. Actually, St. Lucia stands out.
Okay.
And Jamaica stood out. The first time I went to Jamaica, that stood out because in that one, that you have the heavy reggae and dancehall influence, but they kind of like, in that particular instance, they kind of like had a way to like combine, reggae and dancehall and soca in a way that it was just, very good. Because sometimes, you have and this kind of like, this topic comes up a lot over the years and years, is that sometimes you have people that love soca that don't like reggae or don't like dancehall, and vice versa.
Yeah.
But if you like kind of like have that, the background and the history, listening to all of those genres of music and enjoying those genres of music, then me going to Jamaica and like listening to like a good mix of dancehall tunes, soca tunes, reggae tunes, all combined, that that was like all good. But it also ties into me being in Jamaica, and the whole like experience of Jamaica is like completely different than being in a lot of these other countries as well.
Yeah, and I can understand that, because with me, I like reggae, what they call roots reggae. I like dancehall. Not a big fan of soca. Don't not like it, but not a real big fan, because I like bass heavy music.
Right.
And to me, soca don't really have that heavy bass. Mm-hmm. And then with the Trinidad, I don't like the steel drums because I like heavy bass. Mm-hmm. So the steel drums is at a higher, the actual note is high pitch. Yeah. And I'm from down south. I like that heavy bass just hit you, and you get a lot of that in dance hall.
Yeah.
So I always like the dance hall a little bit better because they got the heavy bass in the music, which was, people say West Indians and Caribbeans didn't have nothing to do with hip hop. I think that's incorrect, but I ain't gonna get into that argument. Yeah. So, so they brought that bass tempo to us, and then we just kind of expanded on it. So that's what I like to hear. And pretty much a lot of my West Indian music, I like to hear that heavy bass. So I can understand where, based on the music you favor, mm-hmm. it can kind of determine your experience to be somewhere and not really want to hear that music all the time. I can really get that.
Word.
Let's say I'm going to Carnival as a tourist. Mm-hmm. What should I expect?
Ooh, as a tourist.
Yeah.
Well, as a tourist, that's completely different to me than being like a rookie.
Okay.
Trying to be, fully into the.
So let's say I'm a rookie tourist.
Okay.
So let's say I take a plane. Let's say I say, me myself, I want to go to the Jamaican Carnival or the St. Lucia Carnival, but I'm a rookie tourist. So one, I'm a tourist. Two, I'm a rookie to it. Mm-hmm. What should I expect out of the situation?
Increased prices and flights and lodging. That's number one.
Okay.
Seeing a lot of Caribbean people from various places, whether it's from the islands or coming from the States, you'll see a mixture. You'll see a mixture of that. Okay. Depending on where you go. Also, kind of like get familiar with the surroundings where you're at quickly. Okay. Because you don't want to venture off too far into areas that not only you might not be familiar with, but other people that you might either like meet along the way, or you kind of like had like a friendship with. like they would like say, hey, maybe you shouldn't, be around this area or whatnot. You know what I mean? So you kind of like have to be wary of that. And just try to stick around like the most common areas as possible. But that's pretty much like as a tourist, and it depends on where you go as far as like the country goes, because you're gonna get the 411 as far as like what happens around the surrounding areas and things like that when there's not carnival. So if it's not like that, then you'll know how it is when it's during carnival, because when people come during carnival, there's a lot more people that are coming in from outside of the country. And so outside the country means outside money. And in some cases, outside money is a good amount more than probably what, the country is that they're going to. So always got to be wary of that. Just being straight up with that.
Okay. What I should expect, far as the Carnival Experience. So let's say I go to, like a St. Lucia, or I go to Jamaica. How many people should I expect to be at the event? Should it be like a SEC football game, or is it going to be a little bit smaller? Because sometimes you go to the real big football games, you tailgate. It's 10,000 people out there tailgating. It's like a whole. The tailgate sometimes bigger than the game. So that's what I'm asking, because I know you remember the Florida Classics. The Florida Classic, the before game of the Florida Classic, a lot of times is more eventful than the actual game. So when you go out to the Florida Classic, you got to have in your mind, okay, man, it's gonna be 1 million people out here, and it's people from everywhere, and there's different groups, and you got to be prepared for that, because if not, you could kind of get overloaded with just the amount of people in your face for the next 3 to 4 hours.
Yeah. All right, so kind of like going in that comparison, college football there to carnival. You brought up like SEC or like I said, HBCU, Florida Classic, Bayou Classic, that type of thing. Those events usually attract hundreds of thousands of people.
Okay.
When it comes to like the SEC or stuff like that, because I mean, a lot of their stadiums they house over 80 to 100,000 people, depending on where you're going at. Yeah. So when it comes to like tailgates, like they'll have like a whole bunch of people around there, starting from like 3 hours before or whatever it is. And with the Florida Classic, even to a certain extent when it was in Tampa, was pretty big, but when it moved to Orlando, it was like really crazy. And you're familiar with the Citrus Bowl Stadium or in the area around there, Tampa, Tampa Avenue and all that around there. Like it gets really crazy when it comes to traffic, foot traffic, and all of that. So like that is like different than being in the Caribbean, but because in many instances you're in a pretty closed area, or like a pretty, like I would say, crowded area or packed in. Almost like how they say New York has a lot of people within a little space. That's pretty much the same example here. You would have a lot of people in a small space. So, like for example, if you're trying to go to an event that's not even the carnival, it could take you a little while to get there, because all of these people are going to one specific area that might not have that many entry points to get there.
Okay.
So you got to expect a lot of people for that particular small area. You know what I mean? So it's pretty much like that.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, now let me ask you this question. So let's say I'm a carnival newbie, right? So I may be a tourist, but it could be a carnival inside the United States. It could be one in T-Dot, right? So some people know that as Toronto.
Yeah.
How do I enjoy myself without looking like an idiot to the veterans or to the locals?
Rule number one.
Okay.
And I'm just being real. Rule number one. If you're in a relationship, don't bring them.
Okay.
Don't bring them. Okay. That's rule number one. Because over my experience, I've seen a lot of trouble happening when you bring your significant other to something like this, when you're not really, in the culture. If you're in the culture, then yeah, you could do that, because they know that, they know the vibe, they know the deal.
Yeah.
But if you're not into the culture and you do something like that, then on both sides, you could get in a lot of trouble there. So that's number one.
Okay.
Number two, usually with these events, whether it's in the States or over in the Caribbean, UK, or whatever it is, they'll have a good number of events that'll happen within the same day. And those that are, veterans or whatever it is, will, attempt to go to at minimum 2 events a day and maximum 4 events a day, depending on where it is, right? But if you're a rookie, you really don't want to do that. You really want to stick to 2 maximum and make sure it's spaced out, because you could have one event that you could be at for the whole time. You could have a great time. It could be awesome. It could be probably, as a rookie, it could probably be the best experience that you've had in an event in years, or probably ever. But once it's all said and done, and it might be the only event that you have, but you got another event that you're going to the next day within a few hours, you might not make that next event because you're going to be so tired from partying hard the day before.
Okay.
So you got to be careful as far as like, okay, if I'm going to do one event a day and I want to make this event, make that event, and do whatever to make sure that your energy is good enough to do that. That's number 2. But also number 3 is, when it comes to these events, sometimes you just might not make them. You just might not make them. So if you spend money for these events or whatever it is, you just got to be like, hey, I got to feel like I got money to blow, like $100 or $200 or something like that says, hey, if I don't make this event, oh well, because I just, the logistics, or, like I said, you go too hard on the previous event, or, you can't get a Uber or, a Lyft or whatever it is, or whatever they can have in the country that could send you out there, or a driver, because usually they have drivers, like private drivers, that could take you to these different places.
Okay.
But, sometimes it just doesn't work out where you won't be able to make it. So, and you just can't have the wherewithal, or just that, the instinct to just say, hey, I'm not going to make it. Can I sell this ticket? Sometimes that can't work, because depending on where you are, you can't use your cell phone to kind of like send those messages out. You probably got to wait until the end of the event, So expect to miss a couple of events, and expect to, because of missing those events, you're pretty much, use up or lose that money because you're missing those events. So those are the things that pretty much stand out for me. Like, if you're a rookie, that you just got to be cognizant of. You're likely to miss events. You're likely to have a good amount of time where you got to get to the event or leave the event, regardless of where it is. And like I said, if you have a significant other, think twice before bringing them.
Okay. So let me ask you some follow-up questions to that. Because, we're from Orlando. I'm from a tourist city.
Yeah.
And what we normally do is we normally keep all the tourists in the tourist area.
Yeah.
So let's say I go to Jamaica for Carnival. Is the Carnival in a tourist area, or is it in an area that the regular locals are in? And how does that work?
I would say is an area where regular locals can be in.
Okay.
Like, especially when it comes to like the Carnival parade itself. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. As far as like the events, they could be in various places around around that area, or a little bit distance away from that area, whatever it is. But like, sometimes it's not, like, some of the events aren't necessarily like right there in the main city area. And in some cases, it's usually best that it isn't, given, where you're at, and, how, safety could be around that area. Because even in some of these areas, and even in some of these events, you could have instances where you could have like pickpocketers out there. That's happened. That's definitely happened. There's actually one instance where, even even with me being like a photographer and stuff like that, and me having gear, that some people in this like security would think that I could have been like one of those pickpocketers, it depending on the way you dress and stuff like that. So you always got to be wary of that, when you go out to these events, that it's not necessarily everybody that is kind of like in your, same, cultural or, same group or, same type of vibe. You know what I mean? So you always got to watch out for that.
Okay. And so let me ask you, because, with Carnival, you see a lot of the dancing, things of that nature. So what is the decorum, especially for the men in dealing with women, as far as with the dancing? Because I don't want nobody to go out there and, get themselves in a bad position and also, and be out of the country and may not know how to handle. So like, what is the decorum or the culture as far as dancing with the women in Carnival?
Well, it's kind of, I would have said like kind of, if there's a way to quote unquote prepare yourself before going to Carnival, like I would do that. Of course, like everywhere there's gonna be events, parties that are, have that type of theme, soca theme parties or whatever it is.
Okay.
Where you would just go into parties and you would be able to see, what happens in those.
Okay.
I know that they kind of like have videos out in social media now of like if you're American and you go to these carnivals and you have like a dude that's American and you just they're chilling with your shirt and your Timbs or your Jordans or whatever it is, but you'll be chilling and then you'll have a whole bunch of Caribbean people around and it could be like one of the best soca songs out there and they'll just go crazy and everything like that and pushing around or whatever it is, and you'll be like, yo, and you'll be bouncing around and bumping around. And if you're not used to that, then you'll be like, yo, what are you doing? You know what I mean? So you got to be used to that in one instance. And the other instance is where, like, kind of like we said with like a strip club culture or, like a rap culture or whatever it is, we have those, quote unquote booty songs, be straight up, or, like how they had back in the day, Shake What Your Mama Gave You, all the way up to, back that thing up or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
So you pretty much like have that same type of thing there with soca. It's just that here, you just got to know how to move. And pretty much it's like, how they say wind your waist, gyrate and everything like that. It's more of like just staying on beat. And that's basically it, just staying on beat. If you could do that, then you'll be fine. One, but two, and it's kind of like goes into the whole thing with the relationship joint. Usually the rule is one and done, as in one song and then done. So once the song's over, you just move on. You could, dance with the next gal or whatever it is. Like if you want to get at that chick, just wait till, the whole event is done or whatever it is. But if there's like any instance where they kind of stick to you, then I can't help you. You're gonna have to, do what you do after that. If they stick to you after one song, hey, you gotta do it. You gotta do you, bro.
I feel you. Okay, so in wrapping it up, is there anything you want to tell anybody that could be interested in Carnival? Either looking at it from a tourist standpoint or a business standpoint. Is there anything that you want to kind of close on?
Oh, okay. We pretty much like talk about it from a tourist standpoint.
Okay.
From a business standpoint, it's a completely different animal. We kind of like talked about it from the carnival parade standpoint when it comes to masquerade bands, the mask bands, like having designers design outfits like that's pictured, and how much effort it takes to do that, how much cost it takes to do that. But there's also, other costs when it comes to actually organizing the carnival.
Okay.
Now, there's a big difference between carnivals in the Caribbean and carnivals in the U.S. in that carnivals in the Caribbean governments pretty much, foot the bill, or because it's part of their culture, so they just foot the bill for carnival. You know what I mean? So you don't have to worry about that. But when it comes to U.S., it's Caribbean people in the U.S. that want to do carnival. So it's completely different because if you're not necessarily involved in government heavily, or if you don't have relationships with, the city council or the mayor or whoever it is there, then you gotta like say, hey, I want to do this type of event, this cultural event, and I want to do it in this location. And like, say for example, I want to block off a couple of blocks in the road in order for me to have a parade. That takes a lot when it comes to those in America. I mean, I'll give you a recent example in Tampa. Like this was like the first time in over 15 years that the Carnival in Tampa was actually in a setting that was not completely enclosed, not really a good distance of where the central area of Tampa is.
Okay.
So they wanted to do a parade, and they could only, take off about a couple of blocks that were closed, that they could close off. That wasn't really heavily, like you won't get that much traffic from there, right? But even with that, the city of Tampa, and I'm being straight up, the city of Tampa, Tampa police, or whatever, wanted the organizers to like jump through a whole lot of hoops just to have that portion closed. One, and then two, by the time they had the parade, they were supposed to have the roads blocked off. You know how they have, like the public separated from what's going on in the parade. Usually, they didn't even have those up.
Okay.
So when you have that challenge in America, in many cities in America, that's why you really don't see a number of these carnivals be, as large as they potentially could be. Like Miami should, is like one of the largest carnivals in the U.S., like I've said, but even they have their parade and everything in an enclosed area. It used to be, they used to block off, parts of the roads either in Miami or in Fort Lauderdale. Not anymore. So it's more of like you have to differentiate how carnivals are done in the Caribbean to how carnivals are done in the U.S. Because, like I said in the beginning, when it's in the Caribbean, it's almost like you're more free. You pretty much could do mostly whatever. You don't really have that. You don't have those restrictions like you do in the U.S. So you got to be cognizant of that when you go to a number of these carnivals here in the U.S.
Okay. All right, man. So I don't want to hold you too long, but I appreciate it. I'm glad you was able to give the audience, a really thorough perspective, because I know that this is something that you are heavily involved in. And a lot of people don't talk about it because I think they don't know about it, even though it's something that goes on all over. So if the audience, you got any questions, hit us up in the comments. We can get back to you. But I really appreciate everybody coming through. And if you got, let me give a shout out real quick to Mr. Blue Sox for the $20 super chat, man. I really appreciate it. Glad you came through. He from out there in that Cali area. But I appreciate everybody coming through. And I'm glad Bill was able to come through, give y'all some value. If you got any other questions, if you're looking for somebody to shoot your carnival or shoot your event, period, hit Bill up. He's a great videographer. He's a great photographer. Also got the editing game on point. So let him know. He'll fly out to you. Make sure you get a good package put together for your event. So this is David W. Williams, also known as Diamond Dave. I'll talk to y'all later.